So good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from construction and related industries from Europe, Russian Federation, and I think other countries. Welcome to the first webinar of the International Circular Construction Cluster Initiative. Hopefully this will run smoothly. So it's the first webinar in the series, so maybe we will a little bit improvise a couple of things, but I think no problem. From now on, I would like to ask you to switch off the mics and video to improve the connection. And as I said, we will record this webinar to be able later to send you the link to the video of the event. As usual, I would like to ask you to share the information on this event on social media. Here on the screen, I hope I'm sharing. You can see the link, the hashtags we would like to use: ICC cluster, circular construction, circular economy, buildings. Maybe you can use some other if you like. So this is about the housing rules or housing matters. Few words about our initiative. Just a second. International Circular Construction Initiative and is meant as an international circle of cluster of change, a membership organization later on, with members coming from different parts of the world. And the main objective is to support the transition to circularity in the sector and development of the market for circular solutions. Currently, we are focusing on building strong community of actors interested for this topic. And we are inviting you to support the initiative by signing the letter of support. Besides that, there was quite some meetings with individual potential partners, members, to discuss the options for activities, services of this cluster. And we all came to somehow conclusion that webinars sharing the best practices can be a good start for the initiative, beside the promotion of the circular construction as such. Just a second, I skipped a couple of slides. As I said, vision is to make construction market circular by promotion the circularity in construction, empowering the cluster and other actors, building new competencies and job skills, building the market for these solutions, and supporting the international collaboration. It's cross-sectoral, so it means not only construction, but all areas of industries which are contributing to development of the built environment. So as the first step in our activities, it's this webinar. And we started with startups, Concular, and Mr. Dominic Campanella will tell more about his path to this to circularity and how startups can contribute to the circularity in the construction sector. So Dominic, you can start sharing the screen and start with the presentation.
Yes, thank you a lot. First of all, can you see my screen?
Just I must have shared, sorry. So now you can do it.
So yeah, I already shared my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you a lot for the invitation. Really honored to be also the first to speak in your webinar series, and I think it's a great idea to share best practices around that circular construction topic, as I think there must be a lot of development in the next year to really fulfill all the environmental goals we have. Maybe just like quickly about me. So I'm the co-founder of actually two startups. One is Restado, which is Europe's largest marketplace for reclaimed construction materials. And the other one, which I will talk about today, is Concular, which is like a digital platform for circular construction in the professional construction market. Not like have a background in architecture or the construction sector, more in IT and management. Worked on several years for Google and also founded some startups before. But somehow ended up in the construction sector as I believe that there's the highest potential to really have a change and an impact for our environment. But of course, like in our team, we have the knowledge of the construction sector, which I will also present you later in the presentation. And like just like a private fact about myself is that I'm also a passionate runner. So this is what I'm normally doing besides working on Concular. So some like various some house rules is like I think that my presentation will be around 20 to 30 minutes. I'm not sure like what you like organized on like how long the questions will be. I just wrote here now 20 to 30 minutes, but let's see how many questions there will be. You can also ask me questions in between. I'm just seeing that I don't see the chat, so most likely I will answer them then in the end, but you can already write them in the chat. Yes, and before I actually start with explaining you a bit more about Concular, what we are doing, and also in the end, like what we learned actually as a startup in the construction sector, and where I think there are the challenges for a startup in the construction sector and how you maybe can overcome these challenges. I want to share some insights about the construction sector in general. And I think as you all experts in this area, you are aware that the construction sector is the largest polluter in the world. And still there are like really impressive, unfortunately impressive numbers to share. For example, that 60% of all global waste is coming from the construction sector and 40% of all GHG emissions, which I think is very striking. But what's even more striking is that from this GHG emissions, half of these are emitted before the building is even finished. And what actually we are looking at in the last centuries was to look at energy efficiency of buildings, right? We looked at insulation of buildings and so on, which is also very important, but which is only focusing on the other 50% of the GHG emissions. What mostly no one looked at was the resource efficiency of construction materials. So all the energy which is used to produce these materials. And so the main reason why this 50% in the construction of a building is occurring is the so-called take-make-waste model of construction materials. So normally resources are extracted from our environment. The material is created, it's built into a building, and at the end of the lifetime of the building, but not the material, these materials are mostly thrown away. So also a lot of these materials which are thrown away can be reused, but it's not done. And for Germany, but maybe also for most of the other countries, the reuse quota right now is at 1%. And of course, that is there's a huge of course, first of all, of course, not all materials can be reused. For example, toxic materials cannot be reused, or some materials which are something like concrete is very difficult to reuse. But there's much more potential than 1% to be reused. And what we want to do with Concular is to capture that potential and to increase exactly that number. We also saw that there's some more trends coming up, something like circular economy. I mean, that's also why this ICCC was founded. Urban mining and reuse are mega trends for the next coming years in the construction sector. And you can see that, for example, that architecture offices are more and more transitioned to a more sustainable architecture. Cities are pledging for climate neutrality until 2030 or 40, and are now having the challenge to not only talk about climate neutrality, but also do actions. And as the construction sector is such a big polluter, they also have to take care about the sector. And last, also real estate investors, they are getting more and more pressure to be more sustainable. But on the other side, they also, of course, want to keep their return of investment to get the money they want. So they also have a lot of challenges coming up. And these challenges, they are accelerated by upcoming legislation. So we focus, of course, on the European market. So I can, and also mostly on the German market. So I can mostly speak for this market. But what we see here is on the EU level, that there are upcoming legislations such as the Circular Economy Action Plan or the Taxonomy for Sustainable Investments, which will introduce measures like reuse quotas or like a tax for the carbon emission produced in the production of materials. And also on a more national and local level, we see laws coming up which will more and more go into this direction. That leads to so all these things like, okay, that we more and more realize that there's a huge responsibility of the construction sector to change. But also that now the lawmakers are realizing that and trying to also create the laws and the policy and the environment so that more sustainable construction is possible, leads that actually all stakeholders in the construction value chain have to adapt. And the construction sector is not really famous for being agile and digital. So actually the construction sector is the least digitalized sector in the world. So there's a huge challenge coming up for the whole sector. And we are a startup and we are taking this challenge. And we have a huge ambition because our vision is to enable the construction sector to be resource and CO2 neutral. So that is a very, very ambitious vision, which is actually translating in our mission. And the mission we have is actually to substitute materials which are substitute with reused materials the production of new materials. So the thinking we have is, instead of buying a new material for this building which has to be built, why not using a material which is anyway removed from an existing building? So that is a classical urban mining approach, but the implementation of that isn't that easy. And we're coming actually from Rostado. I already explained to you, it's like the largest construction market, largest marketplace for reclaimed construction materials in Europe. We built it up in the last 8 years. And with that, of course, we were able to save to gain a lot of knowledge, but also data about how actually interactions are going. So here on this marketplace, you find materials which are coming either from deconstruction or are leftovers from construction sites. Now with Rostado, we focus more on the B2C market, but with Concular, we are striving more for the B2B construction market. So with Concular, we create a digital reuse system for this particular market. And Concular has a lot of different products, or like this is our vision. But of course, we have to start somewhere. And where we start actually is at the digitalization of buildings with material passports, and then the matchmaking between the supply and the demand of these materials. And so how this is doing, I think there's someone not muted, right? Can everyone mute itself? I think it's Marco Gorsin. Can you mute?
Yes, I just muted him, Marco.
Okay, perfect.
I muted you.
Great. So how is actually Concular working? So on the first step, Concular can be used for deconstruction projects. So when a deconstruction project is coming up, then normally a year before the deconstruction is really happening, we use the Concular software to digitalize all the materials in a building. So what is done is that we're going into this building, and so this can be either done by us or by our partners or the building owner itself. And using our software, you do photos and you describe the materials in this building, and also add like a lot of attributes like the height, the width, and the color, the condition, and so on. And with that, you're building an inventory of all the materials which are in this deconstruction project. And the result for that is a digital material inventory. And that is the base for like a methodology we developed where we can calculate the financial and ecological potential to reuse materials. Because what we learned is that everything you tell, you also have to put some numbers behind. So what you can do with that is really to calculate. So traditional deconstruction versus selective deconstruction. So when we are able to sell the materials before the deconstruction is happening, you get money for selling the materials instead of paying money to put it on a landfill. So that decreases the cost of deconstruction, and we can calculate that. But not only do we have the economical side, but also the ecological side. So we can calculate using an LCA analysis how much CO2 can be actually saved when these materials are reused. And so the result is such a report where we can show the potential. That is the one side, so the supply side. On the other side, we are working together with a lot of architecture offices. And when they are planning their new building, they can upload the material demands on our platform. And they can also browse our marketplace, our internal marketplace. And with that, we then have actually both. We know which materials are getting free in the future, and we know which materials are actually needed in the future. So what we can do is then to match these two supply and demands. And this is actually what we're doing with Concular. So we create a match, say in one project, 200 doors will get free, and in another project, 100 of them will be needed. So we can match these demand and supply, and with that, sell the materials from a demolition to a new project. But of course, like having a match is not enough, because there's a process between getting these materials from a demolition to a new construction site. And this is also what you can do on Concular. So the steps in between could be, for example, the material testing, the deconstruction, the refurbishment, and recertification, and all the stuff, which is making the whole process very complex, can be all managed on the Concular software. And with that, we are really able to reuse these materials from an existing building into a new building. Now, the benefits of that is that we see, depending on the project, that you can save up to 8%, up to 30% of the deconstruction projects, because, as said, instead of paying money for the landfilling of the materials, you get money for the materials. And also we can see that when using these materials in new construction projects, we can mostly do that cost neutral, but also these materials can be used as part of the certification as a sustainable building. And decertification normally increase the building value by up to 8%. And also very important is that because we substitute the materials, we don't have any CO2 or GHG emissions in the production of these materials, right? So we can save up to 90% of the CO2 emissions, because the only emissions which are created is for the transportation and for the refurbishment of the materials. Right now, Concular is active mostly in Germany. And so this is like a map of Germany and some of the projects the Concular software is right now deployed. And yeah, that's like we are quite happy that that shows like that Concular is actually used in almost all large cities in Germany and all over Germany. But of course, our ambition is also to roll out our concept and our software in the future also in other countries, in first in Europe, but then also, of course, outside of Europe. One project, as an example, which we did was here, it was in Hamburg. So that building was built 1992 and is 60,000 square meters large. And what we did was so here you can see a picture of the building. And what we did was to create a complete digital inventory, which you can see below, of the building, where we really did take photos of all the materials inside. We added a lot of attributes such as the condition, and then also for the different materials like the measurements and so on. And with that digital inventory, we are right now in the process of matching these materials into new projects. Another project we did, which is a bit different to the projects before, is a building in Aachen, which is a city in southern Germany, and so they have a brick wall, and the brick wall is from 1952, and so that will be all demolished, and there should be a new wall, a new building built. And so what we're doing is to take out all the bricks and then cut each brick into 4 pieces, and then put these pieces, so the facing bricks, again on the facade of the new building. So what we're actually trying to do is to really build a new building with the materials of the old building, which I think is really fascinating, and which is definitely following this urban mining approach, which is important. Maybe also a bit like about our team. So we have like the founding team is divided into two areas: the construction expertise and the digital expertise. From the construction expertise, we have Mark, who's an architect for more than 30 years and has a lot of knowledge on the ground and operational. But also Linda, Professor Dr. Linda Hildebrand, she's a professor for circular construction on RWH Aachen, very well known for her works in the construction sector. And then we have like Yus and me, who have more background. Yus has more background in product management, and I have more background in IT and management. And of course, we are like there's much more behind the team, like people for software development, product management, sales, communication, and so on. And of course, like together, we were also able to win some awards and be finalists in some competition, which of course makes us really proud, because we see that or see this as a confirmation that we are on the right path on bringing circularity in the construction sector. But like what I actually also want to speak about to like end actually the presentation is a bit what challenges did we actually encounter so far of working in the construction sector. And as I already spoke before, we saw that the consultancy, and as we also already founded some startups in other sectors, we see that the construction sector is not very open for innovation. It's not very open for digitalization. So that is, and also the construction sector is very fragmented. That is maybe also something important. So there's not like large, or there's not a lot of large companies operating in the sector. This very often the craftsmen are like, it's a company of maybe 3 or 4 people, and it's very local. So that makes it very difficult to scale ideas around the market. And we're only looking at one country, right? So scaling in, for example, Europe makes it even more difficult because every country has different regulations. In Germany, so for example, in Germany, also every state has different regulations. And so that makes it very, very complex to navigate through regulations, through a fragmented market, and a market who actually isn't really interested. Also, sustainability is not really of interest of the construction market. The construction sector is such a big polluter and has such a high responsibility. Actually, if you're outside of the sector, no one really knows. I mean, if you go to the street and ask someone like, what do you think, who's the biggest polluter? They will not tell you it's the construction sector. I bet like they will tell you something like, yeah, planes or whatever, but they will not tell you like, okay, actually the construction sector, they are like the sector which has to change. And that is, of course, a big problem because the construction sector doesn't know or doesn't want to know that they actually have this huge responsibility. And to give you maybe an example, so only the production of concrete is responsible for 9% of the global CO2 emissions, which is 3 times more than the whole aviation sector. So, but like as said, like the aviation sector will be most likely the one who will be mentioned by a normal person on the street. So that increases, of course, a lot the challenges we have. And another challenge in the construction sector is also, we are talking about large projects, right? We are talking about projects which sometimes have the value of a couple of million euros. So they don't want to work with startups because very often startups have this image of being very early and like, who knows if the startup exists in 6 months, but the project maybe is going for 5 years. And you don't want to have a startup going bankrupt in the middle of the project. So it's very, very, very important to build trust and a good network in the sector, so that they are trusting you, that you can do the job you are telling them, and that you're also still existing in a couple of months or years. So so how did we overcome these hurdles? I think one point is that we had them to digitalize their buildings, or also the construction market. So as said, like these deconstruction projects, the materials have to be digitalized. But so they don't want to take care about that. So what we did was to say like, yeah, of course, we can do that for you. I mean, you have to pay us money for that, but then we are doing that for you and you don't have to take care about anything. Also, what is always very helpful is to show them examples from projects where it already worked. So that is actually something which is very important, because like when you tell them like your competitor is already doing that with us, and here's an example how we did that, the conversation changes quite quickly. Also, something I think which is important for startups in the construction sector is to hire really experienced people. So that is expensive, but it also helps you to build up the expertise and the reputation you need to win orders. Because if like these are like 3 architecture students creating a startup, then you will not really be successful, or at least this is our impression. I mean, it would be far. It would be happy if someone's proving the opposite. And of course, like having convincing arguments. So very often you will get a no or a yes, but that is nothing which should satisfy you. You should try to argue with the people in the construction sector and really try to understand why they have this impression, because they very often, people who are very long in the industry, they build up like, yeah, but you can't change that, it's not possible, and so on. But after you talk with them a bit more and you explain it to them, then they're also realizing that there is a possibility to change. Yeah, and of course, what also helps that there's this upcoming legislation which is building pressure. And so we are using the pressure to show them that there's a responsibility and there's legislation coming up. So you have to change rather now to be prepared, or you will lose business in the future. And of course, focus on the right target groups. For example, what we're doing, we are working mostly with architects and building owners, because these are the people who are more open in the sector than, for example, craftsmen. You have a lot of craftsmen, very small, and like going now to everyone and convincing them will take you not only one lifetime. And so we can't do that. So we are going a bit higher. And if the architect is saying, okay, you have to do it like that, then also craftsman has to do it because they get paid for that. And so, yeah, so that is, I think, also an important lesson we learned, that that we have to really target the right groups. Otherwise, it's just like throwing a lot of energy to something which is wasted. And that's it, actually. So that's like was a hopefully quite quick overview about Concular and like what we learned actually as a startup in the construction sector so far.
Dominic, thank you very much. Can you go just back to the previous slide?
Yes, yeah.
As I think this is a good starting point for this discussion. The barriers.
Yes.
Yes, many things can be done, but the barriers are there and we have to overcome them. So now I would like to invite this other listening to this presentation to jump in and just unmute themselves, ask the question, say what they think about these challenges presented by Dominic. So don't worry, it's not a problem to do that.
Not sure if there's maybe some questions in the chat.
Yes,
I don't
I'm just
know.
checking. Andrew is talking about new professions which are needed in this domain for sure. New skills sets need to be done, and this relates also to the organization which are dealing with training and education, as they have to develop these professions. So there was question with large construction companies. For Dominic, do you work with them?
Yeah, so difficult a bit with them, to be honest. I mean, I also can only speak for the German market. We definitely talk with them. But it's large company, and these large companies, it takes very long that something is happening there. So we don't. So I think these large companies are very good in talking about circular construction, but somehow they're not very good in really doing circular construction. because they have such big clients and such big projects that, so far we did not see that they really are willing to change. So right now, we are not working, we are not working on a real project with them so far. So I think it's very difficult. It's more like the medium-sized companies, which also have more flexibility. We are mostly working with them. On the architecture office side, it's a bit different. There we're working actually with the largest architecture offices in Germany. Because somehow they are very, very interested in this topic. And they're also really, really willing to change and really doing that on a real project. So, but yeah, from construction companies, like executing construction companies, we don't see so much effort so far, at least in Germany.
There is question from Uroš Gantar from Sora from Slovenia about wooden products companies, because that's their domain. What is the situation in Germany?
So regarding the reuse, I think wood has a huge potential. I think wood is a great material, and I know that Slovenia is much further in that area than Germany. You also have much more forests, which is great. So I think it changes right now in the wood. So wood is also reused. Very often it's like not reused in the same function, but it's more and more. So more and more wood is not only burned, but it's now reused also in new buildings. So I think the case of wood is a really good one. And of course, like buildings which are built in a new way. So we have more and more buildings and also skyscrapers and so on built out of wood. And so they are built in a way that they can be also then reused in the future. So I think there's a very positive development in this area in Germany. And yeah, as said, I think like one large, I think it's important to use wood to decrease the production of cement and concrete. And so, yeah, I hope to see it even more in the future.
Thank you. I must just say that you're right, that housing, the construction domain is not seen as a huge polluting domain, but it's the fact. And the circularity gap report for this year and the previous one shows this very in details, that we are very important. And this is, very simple to demonstrate. If you look to the nature and if you look to the city and you see the difference, the built environment is the largest assets the humanity has built. So it has to have impact to the environment for sure.
And it's like I read somewhere in the beginning of that year that more material is like created for buildings than there's in the nature. So that is also something striking. So that like human-made material is now more than like we have actually on our planet. So yeah.
So the others, please unmute yourself. Say the question. Don't worry. We are open to any kind of question or discussion or your thoughts. If not, I will ask something. To what extent the regulation in Germany influences, the actual implementation of circularity, circular economy, compare, to some other countries where this is not so well defined as in Germany. At least for Slovenia, Germany is always the case study of how well this is done in your country.
Okay, yeah, so actually I think Germany is doing a really bad job in having the regulation for circular economy, because in Germany there is not a really circular economy. So what German lawmakers are doing is that they're creating a recycling, but like not real recycling, more like a downcycling. So the laws right now in Germany, so the building laws in Germany, they don't allow reclaimed materials. So that is already the beginning. Like the laws are made a couple years ago or like long time ago, and like they're not considering the reuse of materials. Also, the people who can change that, they are like not having the mindset of changing something, because unfortunately, large manufacturers of construction materials are, of course, having a lot to say in the legislation. And for them, it's not really attractive that materials are getting reused, because they want to sell new materials. They don't want to resell the materials they already produced. So they are not interested in changing the law, but they are the only one who have actually the potential to change it. So there's a huge there's unfortunately, yeah, it's not really good in Germany. So, and then of course there's this pressure that we have to change, and the change is then resulting in recycling laws. So meaning that, for example, the concrete of a building is then like used as the crown for building new streets, which in my opinion is not really a good solution. First of all, because I don't think we need more streets, but also like that is downcycling and it's not really using a material in the same quality again. So recycling concrete, for example, is also not a big topic in Germany. But there are countries who are doing that better. And I think countries to look at is, first of all, the Nordic countries. So I'm talking about Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and so on. These are really good examples of also on a legislative way on how to implement laws to really enable circular economy in the construction sector. So they did already some really interesting laws, but also the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is really good because they don't have such strict building laws as Germany. So in Germany, everything is regulated. Like you can't put anything on a building without a regulation for it. Whereas in the Netherlands, the legislation is a bit more flexible, allowing to also have the freedom to maybe use a reclaimed material instead of a new. But also there are cities such as the city of Amsterdam, which are saying like, yeah, so in the future, if you are demolishing a building, you have to find a way to bring that material in a new building. So you can't just put it on a landfill. You're not allowed anymore. So you have to find a new place for it. And that's amazing, right? Because you give the responsibility to the person who's demolishing a building and like, yeah, so, okay, now I really have to see like, where can I put the materials? Because I can't just put it on landfill. And so they first of all think twice if they even want to demolish the building then, because I think right now more buildings are demolished than actually needed. I think a lot of the buildings can be also reused as they are. I mean, why do we have to demolish them very often? But if you demolish, then you have to take care about finding a way that these materials are coming into a new building or can be used in some way. So yeah, that's why I think like the Nordics and the Netherlands are really good examples. Germany is unfortunately in terms on a European level, not on a really good path for circular economy. But of course, we're working on that. And we're talking a lot with the politicians. And there's also some progress. But yeah, it will take a lot of time, and we hope that the European Union or the European Commission is doing there some better work, which is then hopefully applied to all member states of the European Union.
There is another question from Christina. After what kind partners has decided to collaborate with the start of big companies, state companies?
Yeah, I mean, both. So we have state-owned companies, like actually the largest property owners in Germany are working with us on digitalizing their buildings before they're getting deconstructed and bringing them then into the same, into same or similar projects of these, but also big companies, as said, like especially big architecture offices. On Restado, we also have large construction companies, so they're using Restado when like something is left over on the construction sites, then they're putting that on Restado and sell that. But yeah, so we're working with all kind of sizes of companies and state-owned, private, and so on.
Uroš, can you present how you deal with that in MSORA? If you are still there with us, just unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello to everyone. Thank you for your question. In Slovenia, in case of MSORA, we have a strong research and development in our company, and we produced in the past some projects with recovered wood included inside either windows or the doors. But the whole concept of the circular economy, it's broader. It's not connected just with us as the producers of windows, of wooden windows. It's broader. It's connected also with the producers of window scantlings, the glued wooden profiles. And for this to succeed, we must gain other players too. As Dominic mentioned before, for circular economy to work, it's not enough that just, let's say, one player, in our case, MSORA, we produce wooden windows. Also, the construction companies should be connected, and also the producers of the window profiles itself, because we don't produce the profiles. We buy it from another company. And the other company, their aim, they don't wish to produce wooden profiles from the recovered wood, because they never did it before. They're not yet accustomed to it. It's harder also to use recovered wood because first you have to clean it. In case of new windows or new wood, you just buy the wood, you cut it, you mill it. But in the case of recovered wood, you have to clean it first. You have to properly remove all the steel inserts or the bolts. Then you have to still cut it and still mill it. So there are some additional phases. And in current, let's say in 2021, not all the players still want to cooperate. So it's harder to push this circular economy. But we are gaining, let's say we are gaining popularity. Some customers, they want to have recovered wood included. So this critical point, this critical mass of companies is getting higher. And I believe in few years, or at least in 10 years, we will get somewhere, but we are not yet there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we all agree, of course, that the value chain approach, and this value chain is not just 2 actors or 3, but quite a long one, is important to tackle if you want to address the circular economy, for sure, and that's a challenge. Sometimes we even don't know where particular parts are coming from, because actually the supplier don't know. So it's a problem, and if you check then sometimes how particular components of very advanced renewable or electric car or PV systems came from, you are a bit worried that this is not sustainable as it looks like at the first sight. Now I would like to ask some of the participants from Russian Federation if you can say how this is in their country. Do they have some activities in this field? Just unmute yourself and tell us some good story. We here in International Circular Construction, we would like to promote good stories. And we started now, and we will continue that. And we are trying to learn how, by which means, is this webinar or something else, this can be done. So please join, share your thought with us, please. Adam, Andrei, also from other countries of Europe. Just jump in the discussion, please. Maybe later on, I have one question to Dominic and to the rest of the attendees. We would like to promote best practices, and we are thinking which are the means, the best one, how to do that. What can be very interesting for actual actors on the market, which are doing the real business, you know. One thing is to promote that within the community of maybe researchers, even architects and developers, but the rest are these real companies. What will be, how we should promote that they will understand or say, have some response to this. Yes, but, you know, as you said before, you know, that's a tricky thing. Yeah, no, I like it. It's, of course, it's very important to save the world, but. So what is, how that can be done? For example, real case studies from the market activities, from the real buildings, you know, with photos, with videos, with data from the sites, you know, that might be interesting, you know, because this is real life for the companies, not the research or maybe even training. You know, they don't think that training is needed if they don't see how this is actually done in some real sites or projects.
So I think a good example is the EU Circular Economy a stakeholder platform. I just posted also a link in the chat. So what they are doing is they have so they are gathering from the European Union best practices and also knowledge. So they have good practices, they have strategies, case studies. So they have a huge knowledge platform hub where they where everyone can post something. And with that, for example, every city who created a circular economy report put that report on this platform, and then other cities can look at that and can get inspired by writing their own report on that. So, and that works quite well. They also have circular talks where they have like a webinar series, and they have like a conference once a year where they bring together everyone in the European Union on talking about around different topics. So this is not focused, this is like a general circular economy. It's not focused on the construction sector, but I think very interesting.
Interesting.
Karina, go on, go ahead. If you want to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, that's actually a very important platform, I know, but I think the construction has some specifics, and it's nice to see, you know, the real site examples and to learn from them. So that's what I had in mind, not city as such, but you know, more like construction related examples of best practices, which can be then studied by some other construction organizations in the value chain, and maybe gather them together to co-develop something together. Or if they see this Concular is a good approach and actually can be extended to other countries, then within this ICC initiative or cluster, they can get together and start collaborating in transition or in redevelopment or changes of this let's say software to different kind of regulation, if this is the case, for example, and to have options that to find another partners which can be helpful. In this case, maybe some other research organization or policymaker in that country, because this is not something to be done in, you know, short time. Should be longer term collaboration, which needs some time, some support, also some pushing forward, and maybe some support for sure in terms of providing the information of potential co-financing from European fundings or other options for co-funding. So this can be the role of this international cluster. And because it's internationally, maybe there can be exploitation of that approach and tool and system outside the Europe. If you get right partners from, I don't know, Russian Federation, for example.
And I think it's important to look outside of Europe also. Yeah, especially in such large countries such as Russia, but also, yeah, like in some very large African countries, or where I guess there will be a lot of building activity in the future, or Asia, and of course the US. So yeah, so I think, and it must be actually, because the construction sector is such the value chain is so international or globalized. Also, an approach to circular construction has to be globalized, which makes it even harder.
Yes, and what I also think that I said, but to have answer to this, but if it's possible in some country, I think if we show that, they will have more, let's say, guts and interest to develop it in some other countries. If you just see what's the situation in, I don't know, any country, you can be a little bit worried. But if this is done in the Netherlands or in Denmark or in Germany, for sure can be implemented in Slovenia or any country in the world, and we can learn from each other. And actually, we are, for example, sharing some solutions which are somehow simple but effective, can be done in other countries, and maybe some circular solution can be even implemented in some country which has not so strict regulation as Germany, for example. So you are developing something, but I'll no go in Germany because of that and that and that, and this will take 4 years to change the particular standard or regulation. But in some other countries, maybe this is not so rigid and can be implemented. So if somebody from, I don't know, African country see something which can be done in their country, they can get to you and say, okay, come to this country, help us with our project, and we can do it here. And then maybe implementation in some other country will be a driver for German, Slovenian, or some European regulation to change something, because I think it's working. So we are also planning to have a website to promote that kind of best practices. I have a question, because you work with companies. Do you think they might be interesting to share the information on real implementation on real projects?
Yes,
Showing the impact, demonstrate. This will be also their promotion, of course, but you know, we have to see that something has been realized in real life, real business. This is very important for industrial stakeholders to change their minds, actually.
Yeah, I think they're very open to share, as long as they really did that. And then, of course, like, these companies are normally also very outgoing and really trying to promote that. So yeah, for sure they are open.
So we can prepare some service or some activity in this way to have. We foresee this as somehow some kind of ambassadors of circularity in the built environment in construction sector. So to promote them and also the solutions to some extent. Okay. There's another question here in chat. Are there any ways to improve the construction method so the construction is easy, while the material remains reusable at the lower cost?
Yes. Yeah. So I think definitely. So I think most important, don't glue. Don't use glue. Don't use all this chemical stuff, but just screw. Like, that is the easiest way. When you screw and when you build in a way that, like, materials, that the screw only has to be removed and the material can be taken out, then it helps a lot. But if you glue stuff, then it's getting sometimes impossible to reuse these materials, because yeah, I mean, something glued you can't get out anymore, and often in the past, these glues and this chemical stuff also had toxic materials inside, or it's toxic. So then, of course, toxic materials you can't reuse anymore. So yeah, so I think, like, it's quite easy to build in a way to be reused by not gluing, but by screwing. And yeah, so it's easy, like, in theory. In the practice, sometimes it's very difficult to implement, because gluing something is very easy, but with screwing you have some more work to do. Yeah, but that would be my answer.
Yes, of course. In Slovenia, we used to build prefabricated apartment buildings some time ago, but now all is monolith, concrete, and the walls and the insulation. That's it. So nothing of just couple of companies are still producing prefabricated element for construction, but mainly for industrial buildings. And this can be reused, but to some extent only. Again, this design for reusability is something to get into the minds of the architects. So circle design in general is quite important topic within the overall, let's say, circularity in the built environment, and the trainings and the thinking, which can be also, let's say, which can start at the university level already, if these topics are there in the curricula. And this is also one of the ways to broaden the circle mind, circular thinking of future engineers in the construction. So green studies at the universities, because we know we have some attendees from the university in Kazan, in Russian Federation. It's very important topic in their work, and probably also in other university around the Europe, not only in Russian Federation, of course. Also in Slovenia, maybe in Germany, I don't know. Okay, so if there is no more questions, I would like to thank again Dominic for the interesting presentation. Hopefully we will keep in touch. I will share the screen just a second.
And thank you a lot again for the invitation.
Second. Just a second, where I am now. Just a second, I have problems here. How disappear? I share something, but I know how to go out of this. I hope you see the screen sharing or not.
Yes, but your desktop.
Yes, desktop, yeah, now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so let's keep connected. Follow the activities of the International Circular Construction Cluster. Here are the links to LinkedIn showcase, Twitter account, and to the website, and 2 emails to contact us in case you have some ideas how to improve our work, how to initiate some activities. Maybe you can prepare a webinar in this area, presenting some good examples or good practices in your country. So you are all welcome. We can set the date and do it. And see you at the next one. Currently, we are planning a one dealing with or presenting the circularity gap report, and one European project dealing with circular construction. This is Cinderella in the next weeks. So keep us following, and we will meet on the next webinar. So thank you for now, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.